The vast majority of books that you see on bestseller lists are there for one of two reasons. Either they're releases from huge authors whose books are just always there, or they're new releases from decently popular authors who will drop off in a few weeks. But sometimes, every once in a blue moon, something else happens. The book This Is How You Lose the Time War first came out in 2019, but in May of 2023 it suddenly rocketed to the top of bestseller lists and achieved commercial success like it never had before. So what exactly happened to make that the case? My name is Ellie Blackwood. I'm a fantasy writer in progress, and This Is How You Lose the Time War is my favourite book of all time. And today we're going to explore the strange history of this book's creation and how it broke onto bestseller lists against all odds. So I don't own a ridiculous amount of fandom merch. I would say the fandom that I own the most stuff from is Doctor Who. But in terms of book merch, I really only have a few bookmarks and some random bits and bobs that I got in promotional crates from publishers. However, the one piece of book merch that I intentionally sought out was this pillow with the entire text of This Is How You Lose the Time War printed on it, and I curl up with this every night. This book is truly so close to my heart, which is why I'm really excited to be making a video about its history. Even if what I'll be discussing is less about the content of the book and more about the history of its creation and the circumstances surrounding its rise. If you've read this book or are thinking of reading it, I would love to hear you sound off in the comments. So now let's jump into the weird and wonderful story behind this weird and wonderful story. This Is How You Lose the Time War is a science fiction novella co-authored by Amal El-Mohtar and Max Gladstone. Both authors were already established in the science fiction and fantasy space, Gladstone as a novelist and El-Mohtar as a short story writer, poet, and reviewer. But even before all the stuff I'm about to talk about in this video went down, This Is How You Lose the Time War was basically both authors' best known work. The premise of this novella goes as follows. The universe is headed for one of two mutually exclusive futures, one where the universe is taken over by a tech utopia known as the Agency, and another where the universe is taken over by a biopunk paradise known as the Garden. Both of these societies have invented time travel, so they start sending their agents back through time among the various strands of the timeline to change tiny things and make their version of the future come about. One of these agents is Red, who works for the Agency, and another of these agents is Blue, who works for the Garden. Red and Blue are some of the best time agents around, and they often find themselves thwarting each other's missions, so they begin leaving letters to each other to taunt each other with. But over time, they fall in love through their letters, and if their agencies find out, it will be a disaster. The story is told through Red and Blue's letters to each other, as well as some frame chapters of normal narration. The prose is super dense and gorgeous, but as you can see, this book isn't very long, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. All of Red's chapters were written by Gladstone, and all of Blue's chapters were written by El-Mohtar. You can see on the book cover that their names are written in the corresponding colour. One of my favourite behind-the-scenes facts about this book is that Red and Blue are so named because red and blue colours are at the opposite end of the visual light spectrum, showing their opposition to one another. But also, the same wavelength of light can appear more red or more blue depending on what direction and speed you're moving, thanks to the concepts of redshift and blueshift. So another layer to the characters' names is that while they appear to be opposed at first, they turn out to be much more in sync once they stop running from each other. Gladstone and El-Mohtar met at a convention, and they began handwriting letters to each other to stay in touch. After reading each other's previous works and loving them, they decided to write a book together. And inspired by their own pen pal situation, they decided to tell the story in letters. The time travel element was in part inspired by how letters are a form of time travel. In an interview, El-Mohtar explained, "We observed that there was a kind of time travel inherent in letters. When you write someone a physical letter, you're inventing a future self for the person you're addressing it to. By the time that letter has been delivered, that person is going to receive something from your past self." I really vibe with this idea because one of my favorite exercises is writing letters to my future self. I actually wrote a letter to myself on my 20th birthday, only to be opened on my 25th birthday, and I'm really looking forward to opening it next year and reconnecting with a version of myself that doesn't exist anymore. But in This Is How You Lose the Time War, the characters have the ability to time travel much more extensively than letters allow us to do in reality. Gladstone and El-Matar mostly wrote the book sitting across from each other in a gazebo, and while they planned out the book together, they rarely discussed the contents of each letter with each other ahead of time, meaning that when Gladstone read the letters written by El-Matar and El-Matar read the letters written by Gladstone, it was as much of a surprise to them as it would be to their readers. This writing process also encouraged them both to push each other in their craft. Gladstone described in an interview, "It was so great to have someone specific in mind, as a reader, as audience, but also as a sort of good-natured competitor. Amal would write a line that totally slayed me, just laid me out on the mat, and I'd think, shit, I have to give her something back that's at least that good." Even though the book didn't hit the peak of its success when it launched in 2019, it wasn't a flop by any means. It won several prestigious awards, including the Best Novella category in the 2019 Nebula Awards, the 2020 Locus Awards, and the 2020 Hugo Awards. The book was even optioned for TV a few months before it came out, though as far as I can tell, there have been no updates about its production since. Which isn't super surprising because most books that get optioned for TV never get made. So This Is How You Lose the Time War was doing pretty well for itself, and when I first read the book in 2021, it was pretty well known among science fiction fans. However, 4 years after its release, something else happened to propel this book to the heights of its commercial success. Who is Bigolas Dickolas? Only a refined arbiter of taste with immense power. Bigolas Dickolas Wolfwood was the display name of a Twitter account, I refuse to call it X, that mostly tweeted about the anime Trigun. The name is a reference to the Trigun character Nicholas D. Wolfwood, and it may also be a nod to the Biggest Dickus joke from Monty Python. I must note that I'm using he/him pronouns for Bigolas because that's what all the coverage used, but he took pains to remain anonymous when speaking to the media, so I don't actually know his real-life gender identity or anything like that. In May of 2023, Bigolas Dickolas had about 12,000 Twitter followers, which is respectable, but he was by no means mega famous. And then, on May 7th, 2023, he posted the tweet that would change everything. Read this. Do not look up anything about it. Just read it. It's only like 200 pages, you can download it on Audible, it's only like 4 hours. Do it right now, I'm very extremely serious. And the follow-up tweet grabs you personally by the throat. You will do this. For me. You will go to the counter at Barnes & Noble. You will buy this. I will be greatly rewarded. My favorite interaction beneath the tweet was where Bigolas Dickolas and another user just yelled all caps quotes from This Is How You Lose the Time War at each other. My worm buried in my meat, my life ruiner, my savior, my Bible, my cosmic rebirth. I'll be all the poets. I'll kill them all and take each one's place in turn, and every time love's written in the strands it will be about you. So yeah, the tweet went extremely viral as book recommendations go. At the time of filming this video, it has over 20,000 retweets and 139,000 likes. The demand for This Is How You Lose the Time War soared. Bookstores started making signs and stickers along the lines of "as recommended by Twitter user Bigolas Dickolas." There was a wonderful mini-trend of people cosplaying Nicholas Wolfwood and posing with the book. Amal El-Matar tweeted, "I do not understand what is happening, but I am incomprehensibly grateful to Bigolas Dickolas." In an interview with Gizmodo, Bigolas described what drew him to the book and what made him so enthusiastic about it. He said, "I think what I really liked about the book was not only the tenderness that Red and Blue had, but also the carnality and violence that came with loving each other. I enjoy these depictions of romance more than ones that are overly tender and flowery, especially in women-loving-women relationships, where often both girls are reduced to soft, innocent creatures who can only hold hands. Women-loving-women relationships can be extremely intense, and I adore seeing it in fiction." Clearly, the book resonated with a lot of people who saw Bigolas Dickolas' tweet as well. This Is How You Lose the Time War climbed up the Amazon bestseller charts, peaking at number 3 out of every book sold on Amazon. Then, on May 17th, 2023, This Is How You Lose the Time War hit number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list for print paperbacks. Neither Gladstone nor El-Matar had ever hit the New York Times bestseller list before. Hitting the New York Times bestseller list is one of the very biggest commercial markers of achievement a book can reach in the United States. States. And for better or worse, having New York Times bestseller attached to their name can supercharge an author's career. So Gladstone and El-Matar were, if not expecting this, at least dreaming of it. Gladstone wrote in his newsletter, "One doesn't hope for the New York Times bestseller list, especially in paperback, especially in these days in which a squadron of Colleen Hoover titles hang ominously overhead the way a fleet of Star Destroyers might prior to orbital bombardment. Certainly one does not expect it, but we were manifesting." On her own newsletter, El-Matar reflected, "4 years after it came out, This Is How You Lose the Time War is a New York Times bestseller. Max and I are New York Times best-selling authors. Neither we nor the book have ever had this distinction before. Now we will have it forever, because of Bigolas Dickolas Wolfwood, and you." The anime connection of all this was something that the authors got a kick out of. In an interview with TechCrunch, El-Matar said, "As much as it's part of the funniness of the narrative that it's an anime fan account, there is actually a lot of anime at the heart of the book." For his part, Bigolas Dickolas attempted to use his spotlight to ask Dark Horse Comics to reprint the Trigun manga, which had been out of print for years. And on May 16th, 2023, 6 days after Bigolas tweeted his request, and the day before This Is How You Lose the Time War became a New York Times bestseller, they announced a deluxe hardcover reprint of Trigun. It's unclear whether they decided to do so because of Bigolas Dickolas or whether they were already planning this, but I find the timing of the announcement very funny. When Bigolas Dickolas said he would be greatly rewarded, it seemed he was right on the money. Twitter is not normally a place for selling books. There has been think piece upon think piece about how Twitter is a great platform for writers to make professional connections, but not necessarily to sell books to readers. And a lot of these think pieces were made before Elon Musk bought Twitter and ruined it, so the viability of Twitter as a book marketing machine is even more tenuous now. The social media platform usually held up as a vehicle for selling books is TikTok, with the popularity of the BookTok community exploding during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. If you walk into a bookstore these days, there's a pretty good chance you'll see a recommended by BookTok table. Of course, after people sobbing about their favorite books on TikTok started to move copies, publishers took notice. These days, it seems relatively rare for a genuine book recommendation to go viral on TikTok and result in roaring success. Often, it seems like modern BookTok success is just a function of how much money a publisher can throw at PR boxes and advanced review copies to send to influencers and give the impression that everyone is talking about a book. The viral BookTok sensations of today are usually books that would have been mega bestsellers anyway even without TikTok because of the investment from their publisher. But the Bigolas Dickolas tweet is the kind of lightning in a bottle that used to happen on BookTok in 2020. Just a regular person who read a book, loved it, and posted their strong emotional reaction to the book on their social media platform of choice. It's the kind of thing that no publisher or marketing team can replicate, it just happens. Viral book recommendations hardly ever happen on Twitter, so the reaction to the Bigolas Dickolas tweet wasn't publishers scheming about how they could replicate the success for themselves. It was simple awe from the book community that a single heartfelt recommendation and a little luck could rocket a book to the top of the charts. Such was its cultural impact, in fact, that the Bigolas Dickolas tweet was nominated for the 2024 Hugo Award for Best Related Work. Bigolas Dickolas declined the nomination, and the award eventually went to the non-fiction book that I'm currently reading, A City on Mars by Kelly and Zach Weinersmith, which is pretty good. But even though Bigolas Dickolas didn't think his tweet was award-worthy, I am so grateful to him for getting more eyeballs on a book I love so much. And I hope many more people will discover it in the years to come. Let me know in the comments if this video convinced you to read This Is How You Lose the Time War, or if you learned something interesting about it. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my upcoming videos about space, science fiction, books, Doctor Who, and all that goodness. And also remember to subscribe to my monthly newsletter where I keep you updated with all of my latest projects and new content at the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.